Welcome back, everyone, to another edition of the Swim Coaches Base podcast. I am joined by two awesome coaches here, Paul Yetter of North Baltimore Aquatic Club and Tom Kleibaker of Tsunami Swim Team in Kansas City. Guys, welcome.
Thanks for having us, Chris.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't know, Tom, you're just coming to us right after practice, so I appreciate you joining us as well. I'm excited about this conversation. And Paul, it's been a while. We've been doing just a bunch of stuff with Surge Strength. And, I checked in with you a while back, just say, hey, how's the mentorship going? And I was just blown away by not only what you're doing in this crazy era of 2020, that where swim coaches are having to rethink what they're doing and how they're training, but what you were telling me of coaches growing and learning in the mentorship program. So I thought this would kind of be a cool way to close out the year 2020. Obviously, we're probably still dealing with different things with COVID and all the different stuff in training, but also kind of kick off 2021. So thanks for coming on. For you, how's the mentorship going? Maybe we start there.
Well, it's going great. I think part of the podcast purpose is to talk about exactly what we do, and we'll detail that a little bit. But in general, it's going great. I think now is the time for coaches to educate themselves, and it's now is the time because the internet and the things that we can gain off of online resourcing is it's really at its peak right now. And it's something that, if you get on any social media site and if you talk to coaches are really, they're looking for information.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking for, ways to continue to educate themselves through, years of coaching, whether they be young, just starting out coaches or coaches with a lot of experience. Swimming is such a unique sport. We're in the medium of the water, and we're dealing with a lot of different types of things, that have to do with the water. And there's a lot of education to be had. There's a lot of teaching to be done. And I know as a coach, I feel really awesome when I'm teaching other coaches. And I think it makes the entire team better. And, through what we've done, we've really just focused on coaches. I think that with certainly with the pandemic, right? I mean, there's so much that's out there right now.
Yeah, I think everybody started a podcast when the shutdown started. They're like, all right, now's the time, which is awesome. Because I remember, I love it because I think 5 years ago, 6 years, whenever I started this podcast originally, I remember I had to kind of explain to coaches what a podcast was and why they should come on. And so it's awesome that now we have dozens of podcasts. But Paul, we were kind of talking about this offline. I think coaches need to be very intentional about, are you listening to stuff? You talk about coaches seeking out stuff. Like, I think that's a quality of a great coach, right? They're always trying to learn and grow. But are you just seeking out stuff to basically replace hanging out with coaches at a meet, going grabbing a beer, talking shop, maybe gossip, stuff like that? Or almost more entertainment side of swimming, right? Which is awesome. Or are you being intentional about, how do I actually grow as a coach? Where am I weak? Where am I strong? Where can I actually pull from other coaches that have been doing this for a while? And I think that's the dividing line that we can really say in the mentorship. It's about, we're getting better. It's not just, hey, let's do virtual happy hour and talk, some cool sets or stories. It's, what are you worried about? What are you having problems with? Or what's going really well that maybe other coaches can pull from?
One of the things that makes us unique is the private nature of the discussions that we're having, and Tom and I have spoken. Actually, Tom and I have talked, so much over the years prior to our connection through the mentorship program. We've known each other for quite a while, but we've spoken not only through the online stuff, but over the phone, and that, certainly through text messaging and that kind of thing. And this stuff is between us. It's between whoever's in the program, and the types of Zoom calls that we have, and the types of videos that we're kind of kicking out are on private sites. And so I think that enables us to talk about things, in a different way. We're really honest with each other. We go back and forth quite a bit. And Tom, I think maybe, you could speak on that a little bit in terms of the back and forth part of, the all calls that we have, where we have all the coaches on, and not only that, but some of the lane calls. We call it lane calls when it's a smaller group session.
Yeah, I was in thinking about this mentorship. For me, I realized that during COVID, especially, but I think overall, there's kind of a relationship vacuum, if you
Mhm.
will, created by technology, online networking, and things like that. And, coaches, I think, are a unique breed. It's not just the swimmers, the coaches really want to be around each other, they want to interact with each other. In fact, during this entire time,
Mhm.
it wasn't just about missing meets, it was a lot about missing each other on the deck and talking. And I felt like getting into this mentorship kind of replaced some of that. Obviously, we didn't plan on COVID and all that, but the whole purpose was to kind of get into some interaction with coaches around the country. Learn, for me personally, it was about learning to get outside my comfort zone. I've been coaching a long time, and I think you kind of just get into a rut a little bit. And I was just wanting to have a relationship, I guess, with other coaches around the country. And this mentorship, I think, provided obviously an instant network of coaches that I knew I wasn't, or I know a couple of the coaches on there, but for the majority of them, I don't know who they are. So I just kind of made a conscious choice to be involved in that, and I was really looking forward to it. It's been exceeded all of my expectations in terms of the classes and the lectures and the talks, and I would like to see it even magnify and expand what its role is. I think it would be really good for the country and all the coaches around the country, and really we've had some coaches from different countries or whatever on there too. But uh, how hard is it to get a mentor? It's really tough, and a lot of coaches I think feel intimidated to ask the big time coaches, right? So I think this could end up being something that grows into what I would call like cluster mentorship, or something
Mm.
where maybe some of us that are involved in the talks end up uh, going down the line and becoming mentors in our local area, and somehow spread the knowledge and then report back. And I can just see it kind of changing and magnifying into something a lot greater than what it's been. But it's been a pleasure so far.
Tom, I think you're right on it with that. And I think it's already happening. For example, we've had a few times when, I mean, there's this couple times, I think, Tom, you were on with one of those calls where Thomas Bauman from your area, he went on and he basically taught the first 10 minutes with some of the research that he had done. It's great. I learned a ton. I think we all did. And it's been like that in spots. I think, certainly, as you mentioned, there's some times when, I've got a subject and I'm trying to teach a certain concept or something like that. But I come back, from my perspective, getting way better as a coach. I think anytime that what I've learned is like anytime I'm working with another coach and I'm sort of teaching a certain concept, whether it be on the deck with my own team or online, I get way better. For instance, teaching technique, teaching stroke. I have had to develop not only my way of teaching my athletes, but the way that I like to teach coaches how to teach stroke the way that I think it should be done. And I've had to, literally look in the mirror to see myself and see how I'm demonstrating and that kind of thing. And some of the things that the coaches in the mentorship program get, there was one time a few weeks back where we were talking about freestyle stroke and, well, how do you actually demonstrate that kind of thing? And I could actually stand up and do the demonstration and show everybody, some of the things that I do and some of the mistakes that I think people make when they're on the deck in front of the athletes demonstrating the improper thing. And Tom, you and I have talked about this. It's, I think, the future of USA Swimming, where USA Swimming's national junior team program is going to be not only geared towards the athletes, which it should be, it's athlete focused, and it's part of the USA Swimming mission and vision. Is it's all about the athletes, but for instance, the USA Swimming national team, the national junior team coach has always been basically geared towards helping the athletes. And I feel like there can be more coaches involved. And I'm not talking about a lot of coaches, but maybe one or two coaches that are involved with working with the coaches of the national junior team athletes. Because, that I think is the way to affect change, in an even broader way. What do you
Yeah,
guys think about that?
yeah. I think there's a lot of great coaches out there that never get a chance to experience some of the things that the national level coaches are doing. And sometimes those national level coaches and teams get all of the pie, right? They get everything. And so I would be looking forward to seeing how maybe even this mentorship program can find a way to connect those dots all through the local grassroots area, LSCs, because I think swimming, we're the greatest country in the world in terms of swimming, but I think we could all get better. There's a ton of great coaches, even that I know in my area, that just never get a chance to talk to you or other coaches that are in the mentorship. And I just would love to see that spread. And I think there's a way to do it. I would be interested in making sure that happens, because not just with my staff, but everybody in our LSC. So if the LSCs are going to improve and the grassroots are going to improve, I think we need to, do these kinds of things more and expand it in any way that we can. So.
That's awesome, Tom. Paul, I know that you're a big proponent of trying to grow it too. I mean, we did a course for high school coaches. I know you just love helping coaches. Tom, you're talking about that grassroots level and kind of building it up. And that's awesome. You're already thinking, all right, how can we grow this? I wonder for you personally, though, 2020, again, has been a crazy year for everyone. What's something that specifically the mentorship has helped you with, or you've been able to help someone in the past 12 months or so?
For me personally?
Yeah, both of you.
I'll go first. I mean, like I said, I think it's made me a much better coach. I've got to think through, all the things that I'd like to work with the coaches on my coaching staff, the coaches that are in the mentorship program. I got to think through all that stuff. And, that has just made me a much better coach. Thinking about what's important, as a coach. I think maybe this is a decent, actually, Tom, maybe you can speak on that as well. And then we can go through exactly what we do in the mentorship program, because I think I can expand on that a little bit, Chris.
No, I was just thinking, in terms of my own ambition with this whole thing, I was just, my whole reason really for doing it was for the team's success, not just my own success. I was hoping to gain, which I have, a ton of information, listening to all different kinds of perspectives and viewpoints, so that I can trickle it down to the rest of my staff. And little tidbits here and there have already, made an impact on what we do, especially some of the stuff that we've had to learn how to do with COVID and the social distancing stuff. But really just getting perspective on some of your experience with some of the high level swimmers you have really made me look at some of the workouts that we've done and modify those things or try some of those ideas. And today, this was a good time to do those things because of COVID. We had more time, we had more space. Maybe we had less kids in the pool in each lane, and we could observe and take our time a little bit more. I think it's made us all take a pause, and reflect on how we can be better coaches. And I think just being a part of the mentorship has forced us to do that in the right time with COVID. It's just kind of lined up pretty perfectly. And I know not every coach is doing the mentorship, but we've seen some tremendous results already in the few amount of meets across the country. And I'm sure there's a lot of reasons why, but I think one of the reasons, for at least from my perspective, is that we've taken a pause, we've taken a look at how to do things a little bit differently and a little bit better. It just so happens that the people in the mentorship have a resource to do that with Paul and the rest of the coaches that are online. And also getting a chance to do the lane calls. I've missed a few of those, which I've regretted, but that kind of gives everybody a chance to be a little bit more personable and take a little bit more time with less people and talk about some of the things that they did or that they heard in the class the week before or something. So, I hope some of the things that I can include stand up to the test of time and really show that these are things that we want to make a permanent tradition or a permanent change in our program. And we've already done some of those things.
That's awesome. Paul, before you get into the mechanics of the mentorship, it's interesting. I hear from both of you kind of circling back to the why, and COVID gave you guys both a little space, it sounds like, to have to think about why. And whether you're reworking how you're running practices or sets, or, dealing with technique. And it's interesting, as I'm reflecting back too, even though I'm not on most of the mentorship calls, having to create the surge strength dryland certification, I had to continue to ask, like, okay, why am I doing this for dryland, or why am I saying this? And so I could very much relate, even though it's on a different level of, you become such a better coach when you have to turn around and teach it and say, okay, this is actually why. And you have to dig down deeper and actually conceptualize in your mind and be able to give it out to another coach through, usually speech, but then sometimes maybe we're typing stuff up in Slack, to being able to explain it. And just that process. And I think the space we've been able to create, where, Paul, like you said, hey, it's a little bit private here. It's not like these things are getting blasted out on YouTube or Facebook or anywhere out there. Some of these things are really sensitive. And to be able to have coaches have that space to be able to do that, and then dig down, like, why are we doing this? And Tom, that's awesome. Like, for you to be able to be in this as long as you have, to have success, and then to continually say, how can I get better? But then also I need to turn around and help my staff kind of trickle down. I think that's really awesome too. And that's where it can really grow.
Yeah. I've thought a lot about, watching and listening to Paul be a great mentor. And it's really inspired me to actually be a mentor. Like, that's part of the whole goal of this, was like, I'm not just learning some technical things or some advice or solutions to certain things. It's actually opened my mind up to say, hey, why don't you be a mentor? And so I've tried to kind of just replicate some of the things that we talk about, and then so I go off and be the Paul Yetter of my team, and try to instruct some of the coaches on our staff on how to do some things better. And of course, they don't have as much experience. I think they've appreciated it, and I appreciated it too, because it forced me to be in a leadership position a little bit more than I'd taken for granted. And so I've gained a lot from just thinking that in those terms.
I think the honesty part is a big part of it. The fact that we're, in a private setting, it not only allows, from my perspective, I'm, throwing some stuff out there, things that I've learned that, that I've been able to accomplish, things that, like, ways that I've gotten to accomplish some things that I've accomplished as a coach, but also some major blunders, that kind of thing. Some of that type of stuff, I recognize that it's so valuable for coaches to hear that stuff, because then they can not make those same mistakes and they can learn. It's so valuable. And, these are the things, you might not throw out there on YouTube, but within our private site, coaches can really learn. Because, I've personally speaking, I've been to a lot of international meets. I've been to coached a lot of different levels of athletes, and I've, had a lot of success, but then I've made a lot of mistakes. So we throw all that stuff out there. It's pretty fun.
Yeah. Also too, I'd like to say, one of the things that I have really appreciated from mentors in the past, and including Paul, and what he was talking about, was learning to show a little vulnerability, that you're not some bigger than life kind of person, coach out there that knows all the answers. I think getting on here and just being a regular coach, and, talking with everybody and just being a regular guy, almost kind of just makes everybody feel at ease. And like you said, when we don't have all the answers, and when you show that you don't have all the answers, or you show that you made a mistake and here's how I learned from it, I think it goes to show that, other coaches can appreciate that and say, hey, look, I can get better, because look, Paul tried it. He made a mistake. I'm not going to be afraid to do these things either. So showing some vulnerability, I think, is important for a leader to do too. And I've really appreciated that throughout some of these talks as well.
Yeah, Tom, that makes me think of what Paul was saying earlier with the junior national teamers, with younger coaches especially. I think the quicker they can see that from older, more accomplished coaches, that, oh yeah, these are the mistakes they learned. So not only should I avoid those, but I shouldn't expect myself to be perfect or put on this facade that I'm going to do everything right for my coaching career in day one. And I think that's where you could really accelerate the development of coaches. The earlier they see that not only modeled, but then be able to put that into practice. I think that's huge.
And I do think too that showing that to your athletes is important too. that's one big thing. I think that, we're talking about connection with coaches and relationship with coaches, and that kind of goes down into when you're coaching your groups and you want a good relationship with your group and good connection with athletes. You need to show them that you're not perfect and that you make mistakes, because how are they going to pursue something, a challenge, and not be afraid to make a mistake if you as a leader don't show that with your athletes too? So I think it goes with everybody.
That's awesome. Paul, do you want to kind of talk about the structure of the mentorship program? And for those that don't know, we've only been going, I think, about 15, 12 months or so with this, but why don't you break that down, and then maybe we can talk about some actual topics that have come up recently on the calls.
Sure. Well, for those that don't know exactly what we're talking about, I'm going to describe it for you. If you're part of the mentorship program, you're going to be on, or have the option to be on a Zoom call twice a month. Every 2 weeks on a Thursday. We put it at 2 p.m. and we record the call, and then we post the recording of the call on a site called Slack that I'm sure some people are familiar with. And the call topics range, and I'll go through that in a little bit. And then we also have, kind of on the opposite weeks, what we call lane calls. And we decided with the numbers that we had within the program to divide the coaches up into what we call lanes. So we had 8 lanes to start. And I think it's kind of gone down because we've consolidated and figured out the best way to do it in terms of the numbers of people who could actually make these calls. These are calls at different times of the day or evening, depending on when these coaches can actually, make it happen. And these are calls, that I'm not generally on. Coaches just get on and have kind of a round table. There have been times when I've thrown subjects out, and I think there's a lot of times when coaches just get on and talk shop. So we've got a number of different resource options that are recorded and then posted onto Slack, because we've got people in all kinds of time zones, and there was a few months there where it didn't really matter, but now that everybody's getting back to life a little bit more, that matters. So we post it on the Slack site, and people view it. If you're on the Zoom call, then it becomes an interactive thing. Now, there are times when there's a certain concept that I'd like to throw out to coaches, and that might take up quite a bit of the hour, and then we might have sort of question and answer period at the end. And then there's also times when we go a little bit more of a roundtable type of discussion. So that's the ins and outs of it. Some of the subjects, though, I think is what people might really be interested in. So I'll go through, excuse me, a few of them that we've gone through over the last couple of months. Starting probably around March, I'll go through a few of them. Well, one of them was how to take the time out of the water and use it to our advantage, things that we can do during a pandemic situation when we're not swimming. Okay, that was one subject. The next subject had to do with age group to senior success. The idea of, how many great age groupers go on to senior success, how to get a person who's a really good age grouper to continue to be great as a senior level swimmer. Some of the things that, from my experience that I've been able to kind of glean doing, having success and having failures with those types of things. Another subject that we talked about was the concept of the mission and vision statement for your team. Whether you're a head coach and you're creating that sort of thing, or you're an age group coach abiding by that sort of thing, or you're a USA swimming coach, as an example of one federation, and you're abiding by some of the vision type of statements that are made, within these organizations. We talked about, the importance of having a strong mission and vision statement, and, as an assistant coach, taking a look at it and using that as part of your job description if you don't have a job description. So the next week, we talked about the difference between age group coaches, senior coaches, and college coaches. And actually, there's a diagram, if you get on my Instagram, my Coach Paul Getter Instagram page, that has a diagram of, it's kind of like a 3-layered circular thing that talks about that a little bit, and you can see what we're talking about. So we put some of that stuff up on a share screen and talk about the differences between, what's important for an age group coach, a 14 and under coach. What's important if you're a college age coach, if you're, coach college age athletes or pro athletes? What are some of the differences? What are the things you've got to be really good at if you coach senior level swimmers that are like in high school? What are the differences between your skill set that you must have if you coach seniors compared to age group swimmers, and what are some of the things that go, that run the gamut that you got to be good at all the way through.
Paul, I want to stop you there. I think that just that alone is a huge eye opener for a lot of coaches, right? Because whether you are trying to figure out what do I really need to focus on to be great at what I'm doing right now in terms of the audience you're coaching, or if, let's say, you're a club coach and you're trying to make the jump to college, what skills should you be practicing now? Because a lot of times I think coaches don't realize, oh, I need to be working on this. I thought it was this, and they're not even in the ballpark of developing the skills. So I thought that just the graphic that you put up and some of the conversation I saw around that, I thought that was huge.
Sure. If you're a college coach and you're not showing, you don't have any interest in helping somebody go from college, being a college student athlete, to life, then you're not going to do a good job as a college coach. If that's not part of your, if you don't have the toolbox that has that tool in it. So you've got to equip yourself with the right tools. So we talk about the different tools that you need and that kind of thing. So the next subject that we had the following week was the physical and the psychological differences between athletes. We spent a lot of time talking about the physical differences, the difference between an ectomorph, a mesomorph, and an endomorph, what types of events they might swim, what sort of things they might be real good at. And of course, we talked about the exceptions, because there's always exceptions. And we went into the psychological traits as well. One of the more interesting talks that we had, I think, was the following discussion, which was a discussion about the parents of type A swimmers. And this is something that I think is really, really interesting. A lot of coaches find that when they get the phone call from the parents, that they get defensive, and sometimes when the parents call the coaches, they're trying to figure out how to deal with their own kids. And they're not necessarily trying to, come at the coach and play the offense while the coach should play defense about what the coach isn't doing correctly with their kid. A lot of the times those parents are at a loss with how to deal with their type A kids, and they're looking for a little bit of assistance from the coach to either give them some indication on what they should do, or to, just sort of help them deal with the issue. So we talked a lot about some of the things the parents might actually say, and then what they actually mean instead of what you think they mean. So I thought that was a really good discussion.
Tom, feel free to jump in too if any of these really bring back any good, insights or anything like that. Paul, just with your comment about the parent thing, now being a parent, I could completely understand that now. And I think before I had kids, I would have never have thought about that approach too.
Yeah, I think that talk was one of the better ones that I can remember. I remember thinking about my own group and type A kids, or even high performers. You have a high performing group, and if my job is to partner with this group to lead them down the path, the one thing that I like to do is actually interview those parents of those kids before they join the team. Because I think, to Paul's point, that the better I can understand what the keys were to the parents' success and how they went through life and how they were successful in life, I can then kind of turn that around to them and say, our job is to give your child the same chance to look themselves in the mirror and say, I had those same opportunities. And I think if parents understand that, then it's a little bit easier for them to handle their high level performer at home too. So I remember that talk. It was a really good one, and one of my favorites for sure.
And we talk a lot about how parents get better, as they get older as well, just like swimmers. So it's the same exact thing. And
so you coach the parents while you're coaching the kid too, right, Paul? Help direct them, help make your job easier in the long run.
Yeah, I think it depends on where you are, and your team. I think if your parents are a parent group with some history and some tradition, you tend to do that a little bit less, because the parents tend to pass that kind of stuff down. The parking lot talk, becomes positive, and people tend to educate each other I know that's how my parents got educated in the sport of swimming. You know, we joined the team that I coach right now, North Baltimore Aquatic Club, and they all went to McDonald's during practice and talked about everything. And, you know, they just supported the coaches and supported us and that kind of thing. So it can be a really positive thing. And one thing we've always talked about at MBAC is that the parents always get better. And it's not necessarily, we haven't really talked about it like it's our job to educate the parents, but it is, you know, it's just part of the deal. And the more we can, you know, make sure that the parents understand what's going on with what we're doing, the better off we're going to be. All right, so moving on, we have a couple other topics I'll go through because it's really, really fun stuff. I mean, there's been a few times when we've just gone through stroke technique. So there was one time where we just talked freestyle technique. We put up, you know, pictures and videos and things like that. And we just went through different mistakes that people make. I believe freestyle is the hardest stroke to teach. There's a number of reasons why I think it's the hardest stroke to teach. And, you know, we go through some of those reasons. And I think knowing why freestyle is a really difficult stroke to teach, because it has a rhythmic timing component to it that's different from a lot of strokes, from the other
Paul,
strokes.
could you just maybe highlight one point you think some of the coaches, when you did that talk, were a little bit maybe surprised about or weren't thinking that direction? Because I'm not sure how that's hitting a lot of coaches out there, if they're surprised or they kind of assume that as well, that freestyle is maybe the hardest one to teach.
Well, sure. I'll be less ambiguous and I'll say exactly what we talk about. You have some strokes like fly and breaststroke, your left arm and your right arm are essentially doing the exact same thing at the exact same time. And so you've got some symmetry there. And it's just natural symmetry, you know, within the stroke. Now you've got issues like, you know, for instance, swimming on a wall lane or swimming close to a lane line that affects the right side of the body more than left on breaststroke, and it affects the left side of the body more than the right on backstrokes. We talk about things like that and, you know, making sure that, you know, you can create space in the pool for your athletes to swim, and you're guarding against having some of those asymmetrical things happen. But generally speaking, those strokes are easier to teach because they're symmetrical. Backstroke tends to be an easier stroke to teach because your face is out of the water and you don't have the issue when you're learning how to swim of struggling as much as something that's on the front. So you just get better patterning when you're a younger swimmer. And then B, it's really difficult to mess up well, it's not difficult to mess up the underwater portion, but in the way that people mess up the freestyle underwater portion, it's difficult to mess it up in backstroke because it's difficult to cross over in the same way as you do with freestyle, which has to do a lot with the timing. So we talk about freestyle timing. We talk about how your breath needs to happen right when the hand goes in the water. It needs to be initiated at the correct time. Because, you know, the old dropped elbow problem, in my view, is in large part due to the fact that people have late breaths on the freestyle. So if you can imagine a freestyle swimmer swimming and they put their hand in and the breath doesn't happen right away, that swimmer goes through the initiation of the pull with their face and their nose essentially pointing straight down. And then the breath happens, taking with it the forearm and the hand position, and it points towards the other side of the pool. And that creates what we consider to be a dropped elbow and a crossover. But it's happening because the breath is happening late. So if the breath happens on time, then everything kind of fits together. So we go through, you know, some of those real challenges for freestyle are different from every other stroke, making it, in my opinion, the hardest stroke to teach. Also, going along with that, it's the first stroke that most people do when they're 4 or 5 years old, and they do it incorrectly. And they struggle for the breath, they lift their head for the breath, and they essentially learn how to swim freestyle as a dog paddle with the hand out of the water. And, you know, it creates all this bad patterning. So not only is it the hardest stroke to teach because of all the reasons I've stated, it's also the stroke that you've got to correct all of the problems that you've created by teaching it first.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would also say there's so many little things, even on finishes and head positions, that I think swimmers take for granted. When they think that they're experts, they still don't do correctly. It's the, you know, head position on a finish is probably one of the most technical things I have to correct in my pool all the time. So I would agree with his assessment on that stroke being the most difficult to at least look after and teach.
Yeah, it's funny, Tom, to your point with the finishes, one thing we do with our Slack site is we not only post our recordings, but we post, little things that are little clips of swimmers that are swimming. I basically get off of YouTube and talk about some of the drills that I like to do. We do one on the finishes called a 2-second pause. They've got to pause and kind of like a freeze tag thing. They got to pause in that head position that they want to have on the finish. And
Yeah,
it neurally
that was a skill that I actually, when we talked about it, I picked it up and we did it at practice that night, and kids they were like so confused. You want me to what? So, but it did correct that little mistake for sure. So that was one thing that we picked up from the talks.
So Chris, that's a list basically of some of the last 8 or 9 talks that we've had. I could go on, but these are things that it's like, as I go through the weeks and thinking about, what are some good subjects to discuss? What are some questions that people have? What are some things that we've kind of started to talk about that we didn't really get to finish talking about that we can use and expand as a bigger discussion?
No, that's awesome. Yeah, Tom, I wanted you've been around the Hive for, I think, since we started. And I think you've been around just Ritter as part of the audience for a while too. What, if you go back to when you made the decision to sign up for the mentorship program, and not only sign up, but make a commitment of, hey, I'm going to put the calls in my calendar. Like, I'm going to make it a priority to be on as many calls. Walk us through your mindset and maybe help other coaches out there who maybe haven't ever heard of the mentorship and the advantages of joining. And those that are maybe thinking, yeah, I don't know, maybe I'll just listen to some podcasts or, go on the Swim Coaches Exchange, post on Facebook and that'll be good enough. Oh, Tom, you're still muted.
There we go.
There you are. No worries.
When I first started, I made a conscious choice that this year, earlier in the year, I wanted to be better. And I didn't want to stop being qualified for the head coaching position in my team. And I think after, you coach for so long, you get into these ruts and you think what you're doing. And just when you think that, something comes along and makes you rethink something. And so I thought it would be a great opportunity to be a continual learner. I knew that was an important aspect of leadership, and I wanted to get outside my comfort zone. So that's why I did it. I would, I kind of take that stoic view every day of trying to be better. If we're trying to communicate that to our kids that, look, I want to be better than I was yesterday, then I have to model that. And whether it's taking a master class or doing a new hobby or something, I wanted to do something in the coaching arena that, exposed me to other people around the country and the world. And I just thought it was a great opportunity. So that's why I signed up. I knew that it was, the purpose was to impact my team in some way. I was really looking forward to picking up everything that I could. I was trying to soak it all in. COVID really threw a wrench into it for everybody. I think there were times where practices got rearranged and you couldn't make it or something. And, so those things happened. But, overall, it's just been one of the better decisions I've made in my coaching career, to be honest, because I went so many years of just learning from people that were just in my local area. And don't get me wrong, there's some great coaches around my local area, and some of them are on the mentorship with us. But I just didn't have an opportunity to expose myself to people that were not in my state or in my region. So it was just kind of a great opportunity for me, and I decided to take it. So, I just really wanted to impact my team. Every year I'm trying to change things. You can't do things the same way every year, and I wanted to do something different. And as a team, we made some decisions with technology and some equipment and things like that. So there were some areas where I was improving the team, but then I thought, well, internally, how do I want to impact them and my staff and my kids? Then this is a perfect opportunity to do that. I could call up Paul anytime. He would take my phone call, but this was a real opportunity to, also connect and have relationship with a bunch of different people, across the country. And that was, more important to me than just calling up one person and asking, hey, what'd you do today? Or what do you think of this? I really wanted to hear a lot of different viewpoints from, a lot of coaches that frankly have less years of experience than me that are really smart, and they've had some really great ideas. And so I just wanted to be exposed to that as much as I could. I would
That's
encourage
awesome.
that, it's definitely a highly recommended situation. And people like Thomas Bauman, who came in late, I think I recommended it to him, or somehow he got wind of it. And some people have come in a little bit later than I did, but I know we all are enjoying it immensely, and I would recommend it for anybody.
That's awesome. Paul, do you have any more thoughts as I feel like we're kind of wrapping up here, unless you want to go in another direction or touch on anything
well,
else?
I guess my one final thought is, we've talked a lot about, we do this to get better as coaches, but it's all about the athletes. And, the reason we get better as coaches is because we want to affect the athletes in a positive way. So I think that's just really important for everybody to understand. We're all about the athletes, within our mentorship program. We're all about the athletes, within my team, and everybody that I know within the mentorship program. We just really, care about the athletes that we work with every day and the teams that we coach. And, we take serious the idea of getting better as a coach continuously through this constant, interaction with other people.
Yeah, I think gaining, what are you going to gain from this experience is certainly tidbits of things, but having that experience will open up your mind as a coach, no matter how many years you've coached. And you're going to take back some really great stuff that will impact your staff and your athletes. So it's a great thing. I'd love to see it magnified and grow and get even better.
That's awesome. Well, it's good to hear, Tom. Paul and I are always having discussions. We've had more of late. I've got ideas. He's got ideas. And I love hearing from you too, the ideas of how else can we grow this. So that's definitely a goal of ours in the future. Tom, thanks so much for taking time after practice to hustle over here, during the holiday season. And Paul, any other closing thoughts before I let everybody know how they can join the mentorship actually?
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Awesome. So guys, if you want to join the mentorship, go to rittersp.com/thehive. And there you'll be able to subscribe to the Hive. And when you get into the actual Hive, there's lots of content from sites that I've gone around to talk to other coaches, but just scroll down to the bottom and there's a apply for the mentorship. All that it is just giving us some contact information, time zone, stuff like that. So we know what lane to put you in, but that's included in your membership in the Hive. So just go to the Hive, join, and then you'll need to scroll down from the main dashboard on the Hive to apply to the mentorship. And then you'll get on the next Zoom call with us and into the Slack channel as well to be able to join the rest of the coaches led by Paul. So Paul, Tom, thanks for joining us. Guys, coaches, I hope there are much more join the mentorship, and I'm excited for what 2021 is going to bring us.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris. See you, Tom.